My talk today is about Sino-African cultural encounters, particularly thoughts and emotions that are not really important and thus often overlooked in academic writings. As you can see, the title of my speech is about Chinese travelers in Africa. Chinese travelers, by definition, could be just tourists who come to certain African countries, stay for a few days, and then leave. Or it could be migrant workers who have the chance to work in certain African countries for a period of time and then still go back to China. So these are all Chinese travelers. Non-Chinese media often depict Chinese tourists in a very mixed way. For instance, they would depict Chinese tourists as in some admiration. Wow, they have so much money to shop around the world. While at the same time, there is also a tone that Chinese tourists often behave in a very uncivilized manner in the eyes of Westerners. So these kind of stories, I believe all of you have heard about it or even personally experienced with it. From, well, you know, they are always too loud when they sit with me in a Chinese restaurant or some kind of restaurant in Helsinki, or to news report of Chinese tourists stole a toilet seat in Japan and then got caught at the custom at the Japanese airport. Or one of my colleagues told me, well, he once saw a Chinese tourist spit on the flight. I personally had the experience. One time I was on a flight. A bunch of tourists came in, Chinese tourists came in. They didn't understand there's a difference between economy seats and business class seats. Everybody just want to sit in the front seat. And that caused really a chaos for the flight attendants. They had to persuade the Chinese tourists to go to their own seats. So we have heard a lot of stories like this, and it is repeated, also shown in a lot of non-Chinese media. To be fair, I used to work in a European university, and students in that country tend to be quite alcoholic. And we have students who are sent to China to have exchange every year. And every year, before they go to China, we have to remind them, please, behave well. You should not be seen as alcoholic in the Chinese campus. But coming back to my topic, it's about how we see Chinese tourists. It's about their reputation. And the story is not that simple. Actually, the Chinese government has noticed that there is a problem of Chinese tourist image around the world. In 2013, I don't know if you know about the story, there is a 15-year-old Chinese kid. He was visiting an ancient temple in Egypt. And then he put down his name, Yu-Wen Chen is here. So he wrote it in Chinese. And the image in this ancient temple went on the internet, and it went viral. Actually, Chinese citizens were even criticizing this kid, and the parents have to come out and apologize to the society that they have done something terrible in the eyes of the world. And even the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs had to issue regulations and cautions to the tourists. When you travel abroad, please be careful that what you do, what you behave will represent the image of China, not just about yourself, but about Chinese image. Therefore, the Chinese government has started to have several policies, regulations, trying to prevent the Chinese tourists from behaving uncivilized in foreign lands. This is the context of my research. I pay attention to this kind of general discourse about Chinese tourists, particularly in Africa. And I was thinking, well, have Chinese tourists really become some kind of governmental agents? Since now the Chinese government keep telling the tourists, well, you have to behave well because you represent China. So are the Chinese tourists China's cultural ambassador? That was my research questions. And this is also tied to something what we call the soft power of China. The Chinese government has been wisely used the so-called soft power, meaning by sending Chinese tourists to all corners around the world and to present China in a positive light. Sending tourists to Africa also give the chance for African countries to develop their local industry, their local tourism industry. So it is seen as some kind of benevolent offer from Chinese government to the African countries. Well, so based on this, I decided to go on a journey in Africa. I actually have hired Dr. Obe Horsit. He's from Zimbabwe, and he worked with me for 3 years on this project. So we went to Southern Africa, which I mean South Africa, Namibia, and Zimbabwe to do some interview to see whether these kind of perceptions or stereotypes are valid or not. And this is one of the hotel staff that we have interviewed in South Africa. In addition to hotel staff, we also have interviewed several tourist guides, and also we have interviewed Chinese tourists, as well as just general public, general local elites, and how they think about Chinese tourists. In this journey, something went wrong, and this is where what I want to say is related to today's event. Is something went wrong, and I feel that I will never be able to publish those emotions in any academic paper. Nobody will take it seriously, but something went wrong. And this is actually, I think, it's quite normal in a lot of researchers' journey. We encounter some kind of inconvenient data, and then we don't know what to do. It kind of counter our expectations. And imagine that you are going to a magic show. The magician herself tell you, I'm going to split myself into two. In a few seconds, I will come alive again. I guess we all of us would say, well, I don't really believe you. But maybe we allow you, the magician, to suspend your disbelief for a few moments. We allow you to show us, yes, you can do the performance. This is the same. I think I kind of allowed the people I encounter in Africa to tell me the story they know. And I forget all the news reports I have read about Chinese tourists in Africa. For instance, in one of the interview, we asked a Chinese tour guide. He's working in South Africa. So he told me regularly he will bring groups of Chinese tourists to certain hotels, and he has got a lot of complaints from the hotel staff saying that every time each group left, they opened the hotel door, the hotel room, and they saw some excrement, or in a colloquial term, shit, human shit, on the bed. And the hotel has reportedly has complained to the tour guide that this happened. So maybe the Chinese tourist has left something so unpleasant on the hotel bed. And this happened once, twice, many times. So this tour guide, initially he thought, okay, he has to really tell the tourists, Chinese tourists, you cannot do this in Africa. This is really bad image. However, after several times of complaint, he started to think maybe he should communicate with the hotel and then to investigate, because this is a sequel of incidences. Actually, what they found out is there is something in the pipeline in hotel room that the excrements of human beings just keep falling down. And what happened is so many Chinese tourists have never complained about it because they thought they are in Africa. They just had to suck up and then leave quietly. There are actually a lot of stories like this. This is one village very close to Harare Airport, which is the capital of Zimbabwe. But the village is located even close to the airport. I don't think it is a place where normal tourists would go. Maybe some Westerners, they heard about it and they might find their own way to visit the village. But I don't think this is a popular Chinese tourist destination. But because my colleague, Obe Horsit, he happened to be from Zimbabwe. So he helped me kind of have a chance to visit this village. This is outside of the village. Before we enter the village, I guess they were all informed, the villagers were all informed that there's a researcher wanting to know about their views of Chinese tourists or travelers. And also, these researchers basically would like to visit the village out of curiosity. So they see me as a researcher and as a tourist. So that means there's an expectation. They were expecting that I had to present some gift to the villagers before I go. I was asked to go to supermarket and buy some loaves of bread and Coca-Cola. I brought it, and then I entered the village. I waited for a while, and then the chief of the village came. This is the chief of the village. He officially received me, and maybe this is not very not very clear on this picture, but there's actually a heart on the wall. So I guess they have been doing this kind of village tourism for a while. They deliberately draw a heart on the wall, and as a ceremony, I had to take a picture with the chief. So the chief told me several stories about Chinese tourists, and basically their encounter is always with Chinese migrants who built up the entire airport of Harare in Zimbabwe. So every weekend, the lonely Chinese workers, mostly male, will come to the village, and they have several bars in the villages, in a very humble way, several bars, where they will encounter village women, and then they will have prostitutions in a more moderate way, saying stay one night over, and then he tell me all the details that even the next morning on Sunday, you will see condoms everywhere in the village. The way he narrated the story, however, I feel that he was rather indifferent. He wasn't criticizing either the village woman or the Chinese migrants. He just depicted the picture as it is. And wherever I want to visit, if I want to see more of the bar somewhere, I have to pay some extra money. So I guess this experience gave me a lot of feedback. I feel that maybe this kind of Chinese tourist or Chinese migrant going to Africa to exploit the land itself is quite single-directed. Actually, there's a dependency, whether you like it or not, from the locals' point of view. This is, like I wanted to just try how to pump up water in the village, and I had to pay more money to have that experience. To sum up, I find out all these individual encounters, cultural encounters, they are not significant enough for me to measure whether the Chinese government really effectively tried to make Chinese tourists some kind of ambassador for China. And because of this is so minor, I cannot even write any proper academic paper out of it. What is so sure is that Chinese tourists, they are ambassador for China. For me, this is only a slogan. It's a beautiful slogan. Actually, I think Chinese tourists never had the chance to be the ambassador for China. They come to certain locations, do their shopping, do their picture taking, and then they leave. However, in the viewer's point of view, in the locals' point of view, they always heard about Chinese tourists. Yeah, they are the audience, and then there's an imagination of the Chinese tourists. The narrative is they are very rich, and the narrative is also they sometimes do not behave very well in our country. Yeah, and I thought I would never publish this work because it's too controversial, but I would like to thank that the host of this event to allow me to speak something that are not spoken, and that is one cannot trust the single narrative that what we read in the Western media, how they depict Chinese tourists. The story is far more complicated and require more thinking. Thank you.